Good news, President Trump is announcing that the war will not last much longer. So apparently we're on the way to get this problem solved. The Strait of Hormuz, all this difficulty we've been talking about for well over a month now, no problem with that either, because it's just going to automatically open, says he. A little bit of a difficulty when you get into the details about how he's going to bring this into effect. Devil's in the details, as they say, and man, there's a lot of devil in this detail. Try to help us make sense out of this, though. We have back with us again today Scott Ritter, who is a veteran Marine Corps intelligence officer, a former United Nations weapons inspector, and now one of the most sought-after military analysts in the business. Scott, always a delight to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, listen, let's just get right into this. This is kind of breaking news because President Trump just said this a short while ago, that he's going to have this automatically open. Gary, if you could roll down a little bit in that article, one thing I wanted to highlight there is he said, we're not going to be there too much longer. We're obliterating the blank out of them right now to total obliteration, but we won't have to be there much longer. We will have more work to do in terms of killing their offensive, whatever capacity they have left. So it sounds like he's still trying to say, well, there's a military solution to this, so don't worry. How do you interpret that?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is not a military expert. I know he's the commander in chief, but the man wouldn't know anything about the military if called upon to articulate further. Blowing the bleep out of them. What does that mean? Well, what it should mean is that we're in the midst of a strategic air campaign that has specific targets, goals, and objectives that are laid out. But we know what the targets, goals, and objectives were. Regime change and preventing Iran from being able to launch ballistic missiles and drones. Both of those have failed. Pete Hegseth has bragged about, having 1,000 bombs hit 1,000 targets a day. I've been involved in strategic air campaign targeting. 1,000 targets a day is a lot of targets. And if you're doing that day after day after day for 3 weeks plus straight, that means you don't know what you're bombing. You're literally just trying to put ordnance out there, which means we're going back to a flawed concept that took place during the Gulf War, when near the end of the campaign, when we weren't killing what needed to be killed through air power, the Air Force said, we'll just have a formula that if we drop X many bombs, that means we destroyed X percentage of capability. It wasn't that way. The Army ended up killing the vast majority of the Iraqi equipment in ground-to-ground combat. The Air Force wasn't as effective as they thought they were. Here we have a pure air-driven campaign with bad targeting, bad intelligence, because if it was good intelligence, they wouldn't be launching missiles at us today, now would they? If it was good intelligence, they wouldn't have a regime in place that continues to tell us to pound sand, now would they? People need to wake up and understand that Pete Hegseth is the most incompetent Secretary of Defense. I won't call him Secretary of War because Congress hasn't designated him as such, and I'm a believer in Congress and the Constitution. So he's the Secretary of Defense. He's very incompetent, doesn't know what he's doing, and therefore he's unable to pass on to the president any insight or wisdom. The president is simply just babbling nonsense. They don't even brief this guy right. The president gets a short video presentation every day, update on the war. He has no idea what's going on. He's just looking at, images put together by some combat camera crew designed to make the president happy. It's war porn. And this president appears to like it and then believes it. But I'm telling you right now, nothing is happening in Iran that resembles anything that Pete Hegseth or President Trump is saying.
And what is happening that he can't really get around, and that is the price of oil, because that continues to go up, and it stays up now. Both Brent and WTI are both hovering over 100 now, and that's only going to continue to go up every day. The Strait stays closed is more and more pressure, and that's why I think one of the things pushing President Trump right now to try and find an off ramp. This one graphic right here is one of the big ones here. Is it now that the average price of gasoline in the United States is over $4 a gallon. It has gone up $1.05 since late February, and that is apparently one of the fastest climbs that it's had since then. No evidence it's going to back down anytime soon. Not surprisingly, the right concurrent with that is Trump's job approval ratings. Of course, this is from Fox News, which doesn't like to give him bad news, but you see overall his disapproval at 59%. But on the Iran war, 64%, 71% on inflation. All of these are tied together. The economy, foreign policy, he's way underwater on all of those. Do you think that that's going to provide the impetus for him to try and find a way to get this off the table?
Well, he has no other choice. There it is, the daily video montage briefing. Good job, Donnie. You don't know anything by watching the video. I mean, I'm sorry, Colonel. I shouldn't allow myself to get distracted by these things, but they're
understandable.
Bill Clinton, when he was running for president the first time, was told it's the economy, stupid. That's what, sadly, that's what Americans vote on, the economy. Americans, I don't mean to insult your audience. They're probably a very well-informed audience, but Americans at large don't know anything about the world we live in. We're literally the most ignorant people about the world we live in. Most people couldn't put Iran out on a map, couldn't describe the various geographical factors. Maybe today people are caught up in the war and they might know something, but they don't know anything about Iran. They don't know anything about the Iranian people, what their religion is, about what we're doing, whatever. But they do know that they're paying more at the gas pump. I know that. When this war started, $3.11. I just pumped yesterday. It was I think $4.09. Nearly gone up $1. And over time that plays out. You put 60 gallons in your car a week, that's $60. I don't know about you. I don't have, $60 to start throwing around like that willy-nilly here and there. We're coming up on summer pretty soon. Summer is the big, travel season. More important, not more important, but equally as important, or maybe even more, because we're talking about multi-billion-dollar industries. The price of jet fuel went from like $750 per ton to $1,750 per ton. Airlines can't just absorb this. That means the price is going to be passed on to the consumer, who's not going to fly. And if they don't fly, airlines are grounded. A friend who's an airline, a flight attendant, she could be out of a job, and so could thousands of others out there. Pilots are out of a job. The people that work at the airports. We're talking about a major aspect of the American economy will be literally grounded because of the stupidity of Donald Trump. Where's his plan? I mean, even if we stop the war now, we may not be able to salvage the summer travel season, because it's going to take some time for the economy to catch up. We don't have a strategic, jet fuel reserve to draw upon. And if we did, it was being used to fuel the jets that Pete Hegg sent them to fly over Iran and bomb them 1,000 times a day. And there's the other thing, 1,000 times a day. That means we're hitting civilian infrastructure. I mean, now this war was an illegal war of aggression to begin with, no justification under international law or the United States Constitution. And that makes Pete Hegseth and everybody else a war criminal by default. I mean, literally, this is a war crime. Every day we do this, everything we do is a war crime. You want to put boots on the ground? That's a war crime. You want to drop more bombs? That's a war crime. So all the people out there cheerleading this war, all you do is cheerleading war crimes. But we don't know what we're bombing, which means we're starting to bomb everything. Civilian targets. We're killing civilians. We have been killing them from the very first. I mean, in addition to the Manab girls' school, 175 dead girls between the ages of 6 and 12, we blew up a girls' volleyball game. Man, come on, Pete. That was pretty good targeting, wasn't it, pal? Put a missile right there. Well, it wasn't a missile, one of our advanced missiles, because we're testing out weapons, because we're America. We're the greatest military that walked the face of the earth. So we have defense industry produce new weapons. They say, hey, we're going to war against Iran. Let's take one of our new weapons and fire it in there. And they hit a girls' volleyball game in process. That's what we're doing. And every day he wants to bomb them into obliteration. He's not bombing anything. Study your history, ladies and gentlemen. Strategic air campaigns were launched against Germany and Japan during World War II. They did not break the will of the people to fight, and they did not retard the industry. Both Germany and Japan were producing more by the end of the war than they were at the beginning of the war. The Iranians have been planning this war now for 2 decades. They are building more. You think we've stopped their missile production? Think again. They're building them underground, just as where the Messerschmitt production went underground. Underground, they're building them, and we don't know how to stop them. And they're sitting there kicking our butts. I mean, there's not one aspect of this war that we're winning. If people want to point to putting bombs on the ground, that's not winning, ladies and gentlemen. That's losing.
It is. And you mentioned some of the things about the problem with the presidency and this war porn, as you called it, this 2-minute video or so, and just with devoid of context at all and devoid of the other side of the, I bet he wasn't showing a video of the E-3 AWACS plane getting waxed. I'm sure at Prince Sultan Air Base. I doubt very seriously. Problem is, he's not in isolation, because all those around him at the senior levels seem to be playing from the same sheet of music and maybe even feeding him the music. I just talked a minute ago. You mentioned Secretary Hegseth this morning in his conversation, in his comments, again saying that we're winning, everything's going great, no worries about it. And then Gary will play Rubio number 2 here. He's still trying to make the case that the objectives are clear.
It's important to remember the objectives of this operation from the very beginning. We are destroying Iran's navy. We are destroying their ability to their missile launchers by a significant percentage. We're going to wipe out their defense industrial base, meaning their ability to make new missiles and new drones in the future, because it poses a great threat to the region. This Iran that you're seeing now, this is Iran at its weakest point. Imagine them 2 years from now if they had thousands of more missiles, thousands of more missile launchers and factories to make even more. That was an unacceptable risk. It needed to be addressed, and President Trump is addressing it.
So first of all, he's just talking wishful thinking here. You just specified about the fact that they have moved their facilities, their manufacturing facilities underground. Rubio's talking here like it's all above ground and all we got to do is hit some buildings and then it's going to be at zero. But just here's one artist rendering of what some of these underground facilities look at. This is in Yazd Granite Fortress, one of apparently 27 scattered throughout the country where these things are going on underground that you can't even get to with no matter what bunker buster bombs you have. So there's no substance to what Secretary Rubio said there.
None whatsoever. Again, the ignorance is manifest in every aspect of the Trump administration when it comes to this war. Is mind-boggling. The Iranians have been preparing for this war for over 2 decades now. Let me tell you what that means. That means when they buy high-tech equipment and they install it in the physical buildings of their plants, they understand the value of that. And the moment there's a possibility of military intervention, that equipment is evacuated. All that's left is an empty building. So Rubio's sitting there, singing praise for blowing up empty buildings. Haven't blown up any of the critical infrastructure. That stuff has either been put underground in Yazd and other places, or it's hidden in hide sites. I've done this. We did this to Iraq. I remember blowing the crap out of Iraq in Operation Desert Storm every day, sitting there looking at the targets, and we're striking their missile production, support facilities, and we're just obliterating them. Then I went in as a weapons inspector thinking I'm going to find everything destroyed. It's all been evacuated. And next thing you know, that we go to a place that had been destroyed, and the Iraqis had poured new concrete, and that equipment we thought we destroyed was there, back in business. This is the reality of modern warfare. If you give your enemy, especially enemy as resourceful as Iran, preparing, they have 20 years lead up. That facility, Firdos underground facility, or the Yazd underground. These are places that have been burrowed out using North Korean burrowing technology, by the way, best in the world. They've been doing this for 20 years. These have been prepared not just for factories, but for hide sites. They've got over 120 of these hide sites buried in the mountains. And the equipment is taken there, hidden there. It's protected. We're not destroying that. We're just blowing up empty buildings. As an Iraqi once told me, you Americans are good at blowing things up. We're good at pouring concrete. The difference is, what you're hitting is empty building. And when our concrete cures, we're back to full production. We haven't done anything to Iran. Marco Rubio's, I apologize, I'm trying to be respectful, but he's an idiot, a pure 100% idiot. So is Pete Hegseth. And so sadly is the President of the United States and everybody advising him. They don't know anything about modern war, nothing.
Yeah, and those that do, and I've spoken to some recently, he is getting some good advice. He is getting some good intelligence, but he has basically shielded off, according to what I'm told, those kinds of people that are bringing the hard, right, accurate information and instead embracing those who are telling him the things that he wants to hear. And I think these are the ramifications of that. But everybody's not buying it. So Secretary Rubio can go to a comfortable American setting and say those things, and especially if you get into the MAGA world, they'll be embraced. But when he starts getting outside the country, we start getting a little bit different reaction, especially in Europe.
Look,
I'm sorry, Gary, play that first, Rubio, if you could.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Are we all concerned about the reception that you might get when we arrive at
The reception I might get?
Yeah, the reception.
By who?
Well, by all your fellow foreign ministers.
I'm not concerned about it. I'm here on behalf of the United States of America. I look forward to meeting with them. I don't know what reception I would get from them. I think they should be happy that I'm going.
Well,
Now we don't have to
they
go.
might be happy, but they're not happy with what's going on.
Well, again, I'm not there to make them happy. I get along with all of them on a personal level. We work with those governments very carefully, but the people I'm interested in making happy are the people of the United States. That's who I work for. I don't work for France or Germany or Japan. These are all good people. We're going to have great meetings. But I work for them. I work for the people of the United States.
And so, look, we had just this morning, President Trump was dogging both the UK and France and saying, you know, basically you both suck and you better find some courage, etc. We had also, let's see, the Minister of Defense of Spain telling us to pound sand. You can't use our air power. Italy has now said you can't use our air power. And Melania from Italy was quite vociferous, as she often is in her description today. You have Keir Starmer saying this is not our war. Friedrich Merz is saying we'll study the situation here. I mean, everywhere you look, that people are distancing themselves from the United States, but nobody is embracing this stuff. What do you make of that?
The idea that we would go to war and the consequences are global. I mean, anybody worth their salt knew that by attacking Iran, the probability that Iran would disrupt in a significant fashion the global energy markets. I mean, this was a knowable, or as Donald Rumsfeld like to say, a known. But you know, in Desert Storm, President George Herbert Walker Bush assembled, you know, a great coalition, and we did it before we dropped bombs. We had French troops, British troops on the ground. We had Italian aircraft. We had basically people lining up to support us. We had checked that box off that said, before we go to war against Iraq, check off the box. In 2003, we tried. I remember in 2002, Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Armitage going to NATO to try and sell them on the wisdom of NATO getting involved in a military operation against Iraq. I was invited by NATO afterwards to brief them, and they believed me more than they believed Wolfowitz and Armitage about weapons of mass destruction. So NATO didn't get involved, but at least they made the effort. And then they, you know, so talk about old Europe, new Europe. They went and got the Poles in Eastern Europe to support their illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq. Here, we didn't even try. We just did it. And now Europe's sitting there going, our economies are crashing. I mean, at a time when they were already strained because of the blowback from their sanctions policy against Russia, now their economies are crashing. It's an illegal war. I mean, you know, it's not like this is a just war. It's not like Iran was posing a threat to anybody. This is an illegal war of aggression. And so Europe's just saying, no, we're not doing this. And what President Trump wants to get, he didn't even try. Why didn't Marco Rubio fly around Europe saying, hey, we think they have a nuclear bomb. We need you to line up. We need support. We need help with the Strait of Hormuz. We need to be proactive here, have a force ready to go. You know, we haven't prepared for anything. All these ground troops that are moving in right now, this is a reaction to reality, post-conflict reality, meaning we didn't plan for this. Why didn't we have the Muse right there when the time came? Why didn't we have the 82nd Airborne right there ready to roll? Why didn't we have the 75th Ranger Regiment out there ready to rock, Delta 4 deployed? We didn't have anything there because this was supposed to be quick and easy. This was supposed to be boom, 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 regime change, collapse, everybody quits, no missiles launched. That was the war planning that Pete Hegseth came up with. I mean, there's nothing more, and we've been making it up as we go along. Colonel, you're aware of the OODA loop, right? You know,
Oh, yeah.
John Boyd's, decision-making cycle, and it's essential. I mean, the Marine Corps adopted it as its, one of its premier foundational, starting points, intellectual starting points for maneuver warfare, to make your enemy react to you, get inside their decision-making cycle. The Iranians own our decision-making cycle. They're driving every aspect of this war. We are reacting to them, and I'm here to tell you right now, just like in a fighter pilot situation, if a fighter pilot, acts, the other side reacts. John Boyd's thing was he could get behind you and shoot you down. Same thing in war. The Iranians are going to win this war because they know what they're doing. They have a plan. They've been sticking to that plan, and their plan is working. We don't know what we're doing. We don't have a plan, and we're just making it up as we go along.
Dan, you got to bring yourself in, Dan.
Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. That's obviously a major problem that we have, and something that I don't even think that the highest levels that we recognize. You mentioned the OODA loop there, and I was going to bring up a graphic to show the people who may not understand what that acronym stands for. But basically, it means that you have thought things through all the way before you take the first step there, and then when the things go wrong, you've already thought through branches and sequels and things you can do, etc. It's a logical, rational, mental framework that you can go on. We were trained on it. You were. I definitely was. What happened to those people? Because where are they now? Do you think that? And let's just look at that for a second, because that is central to this issue here. All those things you just described, and probably more that we could mention here, are evidence that no planning was done, no resourcing, and then no idea about, well, if plan A doesn't work, what is plan B, C, or D at this level, at that level, at the other level? We're just going off the cuff here. What does that tell you about the state of play of strategic thinking in apparently the most powerful nation on the planet?
Look, Colonel, you know this. You were around when, after the Gulf War, you saw the politicization of the United States military. You saw the Clinton, administration come in and immediately say, look, the military professionals that are currently running the military for 12 years, they've been under the control of, Ronald Reagan and Bush type Republicans. They mocked Barry McCaffrey when they made him the czar. They mocked everybody. And so they started replacing generals they felt that were ideologically non-aligned. You don't have generals that are ideological. Generals are supposed to be apolitical. Their job is to be military professionals. Their job is to tell politicians what their professional military opinion, not to sit there and say, I support your policy. Military officers aren't policy makers in terms of foreign policy, economic policy, etc. That's the civilian leadership's job, and the military's job is to implement the policy, execute the policy to the best of their professional military capabilities. But instead, he started pulling people out, replacing them, and we began the process of the politicization to the point where today you can't be an effective combat leader and survive a battalion commander selection board, because they're going to get into, or at least, they get into things that don't matter. You can't make it from lieutenant colonel to colonel unless you've done your purple defense industry type thing and learn about money and all this kinds of. These leaders today aren't leaders; they're managers. That's the problem, Colonel. And I know I'm insulting a lot of people right now, but I just remember when I came back from the Gulf War, the Marine Corps tried to sell total quality management, TQM. And I just remember sitting in an auditorium with a bunch of company grade officers going, we don't manage, we lead. This is what they taught us from day one. We're not managers. That's what civilians do. That's what the Air Force does. We lead. We get out there and we show our tactical proficiency, and we show our physical fitness, and we lead by example. We lead by expertise. Our modern leaders are managers, and they're managers of the worst sort, because they're not managing military professionalism. They're managing a business. They're managing a political campaign. They've become people who become cheerleaders for the policies of the civilian leadership. And therefore, they forgot that their job is to say not just no, but hell no on occasion. For instance, can you do this? No, sir, can't do that. I mean, if you order me to do it, I guess we'll send the Marines across the beach, but then they'll all die. But they forgot how to tell no. We had one guy get fired. One guy, the director of the Joint Chiefs, got fired because he dared say this plan isn't going to work. But what about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Why is he still there? Why is everybody there?
In this morning's briefing on this very topic you're mentioning, he was asked about this issue about the war crimes that you mentioned, and specifically in this True Social by President Trump, where he said that we're going to be blowing up completely and obliterating all Iran's electric generating power plants, oil wells, cargo island, and possibly desalination plants. And they said, without using the word, because I think they were afraid to, they get kicked out. They said, basically, how do you protect the civilians, i.e. it's a war crime? How can you do that? And he had, in my view, a golden opportunity to say something there and stand up for the integrity of the officer corps and the moral right that used to represent the United States. And instead, he sounded like a lawyer. He said, well, what we can do is we're going to consider that, and then we're going to, take consideration of, literally said nothing at all, didn't even answer the question, and then moved on to whatever was next. And that is, if that's at the highest, and you said this guy here, the deputy, whatever, got fired, what message does that send to the rest of the Corps?
No, this is look, there's so many aspects of this conflict that are America's going to pay a heavy price. We're going to pay a heavy price economically. We're going to pay a heavy price politically. People don't understand that this president has violated the Constitution in a flagrant manner. We have shredded international law. I mean, when you've got the Russian and Chinese saying there is no more international law, it's a wild, wild west out there. Guys, you don't want to live in a world, especially a world with all these nuclear weapons, where it's the wild, wild west. You sort of want the rule of law. It's like what happened in the wild, wild west. You don't want gunfighters shooting it out. You want law and order to come in, bring civilization in, so that the women and children now can live in the town, walk the streets peacefully without fear of a gunfight. Today, it's all gunfight. That's where we're at right now. But the military leadership, you have a duty and responsibility. I mean, again, it's the law of war manual. I mean, this is just basic stuff. And just so everybody understands, we have a manual, the law of war manual, but we also have Congress has passed, I think in 1996, the War Crimes Act. And the War Crimes Act says it's against the law to violate the Geneva Conventions. These matter. International law matters. There's a law that says if you violate them, you can be, and if it's a wanton violation, you can be put to death. That's the penalty, the death penalty. And so everybody, just so people understand, wrap your heads around this. Everybody that's carrying out this war right now, if there was a court of jurisdiction, would be found guilty and could be put to death. That's how serious this is. It's therefore incumbent upon the military officers to stand up and say, Mr. President, in accordance with the law of war manual, we have to look at issues such as distinction. We have to distinguish between civilian and military, and we have to look at proportionality, meaning the amount of violence that we're applying, is it proportional to the military objectives that we're doing? And right now, Mr. President, to be honest, your tweet, it doesn't meet any of that criteria. It's if to execute that at this point in time would be an unlawful order, and we have to refuse it. And I'm the senior guy in the military, and I'm here to tell you right now, I'm telling everybody else in the military, if you fire me, the next guy that comes up, you're going to have to fire him. You have to fire everybody down the chain of command, because nobody's going to violate the Constitution of the United States. You're not above the law. We took an oath to the Constitution, not to you, Mr. President, and you must abide by this. This isn't a military rebellion. It's not anything other than a military officer showing the integrity to say, we will not commit crimes in your name.
Yeah, that is so important to distinguish, Scott. This is not about a rebellion. This is not about saying don't obey the president at all. This is saying live up to your vow and your oath to the Constitution, which supersedes anyone in the office of the Oval Office. And nobody in the White House, it doesn't matter who it is, Trump or anyone else that may follow him, it's still overall. That's what should happen. But let me show you what does happen on a regular basis. Here is former CENTCOM Commander General McKenzie given his view of kind of how things are right now. See what you think.
This is part of a plan that's been in existence for many years. What we're doing right now is we're reducing Iranian ability to target ships in the Strait through their short-range missiles, their drones, and other activities. We do that by maintaining air superiority over southern Iran on a 24/7 basis, looking for where these missiles are and striking them relentlessly. Once we reduce those to a very low level, then you'll be able to go in, if necessary, sweep for mines. I'm not certain they put mines in the water yet. I predict eventually they will. It's their nature. But we have the ability to do this. We're on plan. I'll be honest with you, Margaret. I've simulated this many years in many positions at Central Command. We're a little further along than we would have expected to be at this point in all the simulations that I've seen.
Come on, man. How can anybody, a former four-star, say this is ahead of schedule? I mean, he's literally echoing what President Trump himself has said. How can anyone say that this is even on schedule for the reasons you talked about a second ago? And yet that's what a retired four-star says with a straight face to the American public.
Well, he war gamed it. In a war game, everything works out great. Not always. Sometimes you lose the war games, like every time we try to invade Taiwan or protect Taiwan from a Chinese invasion. We don't win those ones. I'd like to see how we did in his Strait of Hormuz clearance. But he's using terminology. You could take what he's saying and apply it, for instance, to Iraq. We were looking for ballistic missiles during Desert Storm, and we had air superiority, and our planes were, putting we were scanning for targets on the ground and interdicting where necessary. I mean, it all sounded really good, and we were trying to do that. I just want people to know that we didn't know what we were bombing then, and the Iraqis were still launching Scud missiles against Israel. So those planes are out there doing everything that four-star general just said. We were hitting Bedouin tents because the heat signature at night, when they put all their goats inside the tent, it looked like a cylindrical object. So we blew that up, killing Bedouin families. We hit school buses because some stupid person said that the length of the school bus is enough to hide a component of the Scud missile. So we blew those up. We blew up Jordanian tanks, trucks. We blew up, gas stations. We blew up everything that had nothing to do with, because we don't know what we're doing when we panic. I'm sorry, General McKenzie, you're full of it, and you know you're full of it because you're just sitting there throwing out peacetime platitudes. Pete Hicks has said he's bombing 1,000 points of ground. What are those targets? And we don't have control over the sky. See, we did everything long distance, and we're out of cruise missiles. We're out of the joint standoff weapons. Now we have to go in, and as we go in, we're finding out that the Iranian air defense is very much active. They're shooting down our drones. They hit an F-35. They're causing other planes to break off. We don't have control of the skies that he's implying. We don't know what we're bombing. He has no clue what he's talking about. He's sitting there playing a peacetime war game in his head, forgetting that the people who are executing this war plan, there is no war plan. Everything we're doing today was not pre-planned, ladies and gentlemen. There is no war plan. We are making it up as we go along. So McKenzie, go to hell. Really. No one should put that man on TV anymore, because what good is he? He's not telling the truth. He's implying that this is a plan. There is no plan, McKenzie, and you know there is no plan, because the plan you executed, which I know intimately, didn't involve us waiting 3 weeks to start putting forces in. We would have gone in on day one, blowing the crap out of the shore defenses, pushing in, seizing territory, pushing in further. But you don't take a MEU and push in too far. If you know anything about Marine expeditionary units, the first MEU will come in and seize the initial objective. Then another one has to come in behind it. But normally you have to park 2 more. So you need 3. That's a brigade. You need another brigade to come in and push more inland. So now you're talking about a division's worth of troops. We don't have that. We have 2 MEUs. You think they're going to do what? Push in? They're not pushing in. They're going to die. And what, you're going to bring in paratroopers? God bless the airborne. But you know what? They'll just jump in and die. Think Arnhem. Think 1st British Airborne Division. That's what will happen to any paratroopers going. Rangers, they will die. Delta Force, let me, guys, give you just a little brief secret about Delta Force in Desert Storm. They were put into Western Iraq. Every single insertion was detected as it happened. They were compromised. They didn't spend, this wasn't Delta Force stealthing around. They were running for their lives from day one. They ran. They were running, fleeing. Brave guys. I'm not putting them down. But to think that we're sitting there, you're going to go into Iran and we're going to control anything, we will control nothing. Nothing, because there's no plan. What makes a military unit professional isn't just the training of the troops and the quality of the leadership. It's the quality of the plan, and the plan involves logistics and a whole bunch of other stuff that just isn't happening. We are literally making it up as we go along. There is no plan, and McKenzie knows it. McKenzie should understand there is no plan.
Here's the interesting part. So you have just very cogently and passionately laid out what is necessary if there was a plan, and what if you were going to make effective use of ground troops, you would have to have all those things: numbers, you would have to have training and logistics, and a plan to go along with it. If you had that, then you could say that could potentially provide some leverage for negotiations and for diplomacy, as it turns out. Well, our former chief diplomat, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, apparently doesn't know any of the things you just said, because here he was talking about how just the presence of physical boots somehow magically gives diplomacy a chance.
But you also move them there for security, troops safe that are in the region. So there's lots of radar systems, counter-air systems that are being moved into place as well. You do move it there for a purpose of leverage and negotiation. Mr. Witkoff's position is much stronger when there's a bunch of Marines sitting on your doorstep. This is not time to pull back. They still have systems. You can see they're still able to fire rockets, missiles, not only from the Houthis and from Hezbollah in Lebanon, but directly from Iran, threatening our allies in the region, the Gulf states, the Emirates. We need to take down this system entirely.
I'm sorry, I about lost it there because Gary had a new warning system for Pompeo, which was perfectly self-appropriate for what the world he said there. Because he's saying that last part there, that we have to take down the system entirely. And as you just said, you would need at least a brigade, 3 separate MUs to take even one piece of terrain. And he's talking about taking down the whole system. I mean, literally, what in the hell is going on with the senior echelon of our country intellectually?
We've been imbued with arrogance and ignorance. It's a horrible combination, because the ignorant, arrogant, you get people like Pompeo. Again, Americans, understand, we're the best when we have a just cause. I mean, we sort of need a just cause to begin. Anything else than that, like right now, even if we were military proficient, which we're not, this isn't a just cause. This would be the equivalent of cheering on the Nazis. Yes, I said that because we are committing a war of aggression. That's the same crime that the Nazis were hung by the deck after Nuremberg. We're committing the same crime, the exact same crime. But you have to have military proficiency here. You have to have Marines sitting on a ship, unable to project power forward. Nobody's scared? You think the Iranians are scared of 4,000 Marines? They're not scared. I mean, the Iranians are saying, please bring them, because 4,000 Marines, no matter how well trained they are, have zero combat capacity when it comes to meaningfully affecting the outcome of this battle. None. They'll just all die. It would take us 900,000 to 1.2 million troops to physically defeat the Iranians if we could do it. I don't think we can, because we'd have to project this power. Again, Curly, you know this. You know what it means to put a division on the ground, and every kilometer forward complicates your logistic sustainability, your ability to maintain. Tanks just don't keep driving. They break down. They need to be repaired. Engines need to be overhauled. Where do you do that in combat? There's a whole system that has to go in. It's not just about putting boots on the ground with guns. You got to put things on the ground. You got to put fuel. You got to put all the stuff that makes stuff work. And that means you have to have planned it. It has to be there ready. And you have to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, because my God, if that LST comes in with your stuff that you're going to use and it gets hit and blows up, you better have that spare LST coming in with the spare equipment, because that's what you need to win this war. We don't have any of that going on right now. This is a tragic joke. The only good news is I can't believe there's a military commander out there who would execute any of the orders people are talking about right now. I just want people, again, I love my Marines. God, I'm very proud of being a Marine, and I'm proud of the Marines that are out there. But in May of 1975, the Cambodians, the Khmer Rouge, captured the Mayaguez. It took American sailors prisoner, took them off the ship. We thought they took them to this little island called Koh Tang Island. And so the decision was to take a Marine battalion landing team and assault the island and get these guys taken care of. Why not? We're America. It's just the Khmer Rouge. What the hell can they do? Intelligence says there's 30 to 50 of them. So we brought in the Marines, 11 helicopters in the first wave. 3 of them were shot down, killing a whole bunch of Marines and the Air Force guys. Of the 8 remaining, 5 were so badly damaged they had to flee, some of them unable to dislodge their Marines. So we're down to 3 helicopters now, and we have Marines on an island, not insufficient numbers, because that's what happens if you don't get the full complement in. Now you have Marines there who are in danger of being overrun because there is 300 to 500 Khmer Rouge heavily dug in, knowing what they were doing. And we ended up in a day-long battle that we lost. We lost the Battle of Koh Tang Island. We had to withdraw, leaving our dead on the ground. Worse, we left 3 Marines. An M60 team on the left flank was left. 3 Marines were abandoned by the Marines there because we left in a panic. They were captured and executed by the Khmer Rouge. That's what will happen if we go into Karg Island or any other place. We don't have the forces to do this.
You mentioned something about, we're talking so many things here about the leaders and putting troops in positions where they can not succeed, as you say, because they're not having the resource or the plan. There was a comment, I'd like your viewpoint on it this morning. You said a second ago, one other thing I think is also much more important than people recognize, and that's having a just cause to fight for. not just because you're told to or because of something else fake. And this is what I believe. I'd like your view specifically. And this is from Secretary Hegseth this morning, where he's trying to give the justification to the troops as to why they should fight. Tell me, as a former combat soldier yourself, is this going to make you want to fight more?
As far as President Trump and boots on the ground, I don't understand why the base, which they have already, they understand, wouldn't have faith in his ability to execute on this. Look at his track record of pursuing peace through strength, America first outcomes. What he's simply saying, and it's exactly true, and I've said from this podium too, we're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we could come at them with boots on the ground. And guess what? There are. Not do. But if anybody has internalized the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan as the first one, President Trump, to call them out for what they are, he's not going to repeat those lessons.
And sorry, about right after that, one of the other sound bites was, he said, listen, these guys know they're fighting for their future. They're fighting to make sure there are no weapons of mass destruction, no nuclear weapons ever come in. They're fighting for their children. That's what he said today. How do you think that was resonating well with the troops?
I don't know. Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli back in the day, he just cared about, Lance Corporal Rodriguez and Lance Corporal Smith to his left and his right. He cared about, not dishonoring the Marine Corps. He cared about being able to execute his mission when called upon. He was worried about whether or not how he'd respond under fire. His corporal and his sergeant likewise were worried about the tactical mission in front of them. The lieutenants were as well. I don't think they spent too much time worrying about the grander, geopolitical consequences of what they're doing or what's right and wrong. There's no right and wrong in combat. There's life and death. Your job is to do what you're told to do and trust that your leadership is making the right decisions. Trust that your leadership has done its job. Trust that there's a plan, that when you're going in there, there's a plan to back you up. And that works. So those Marines will fight. But you know what will happen, Colonel, when there comes a point where they're on the ground and it suddenly becomes clear that they've been betrayed, that there is no plan, and that there is no, nobody's coming to save them, that this has gone to hell in a handbasket, and that suddenly they realize, wait a minute, we're invading another country for no reason. The morale will plummet. This happened in Vietnam. I wasn't in Vietnam, but I understand, the first people that went into Vietnam were true believers. My father was a true believer. He deployed in Vietnam in 1966, early on, Air Force, but he believed in the mission. He believed that we were doing the right thing. But look at the people that came out in 1970 after Tet. They didn't believe it anymore. They lost faith. They realized that we were not the good guys in this fight. We were the bad guys. And the total collapse. Remember, it took us a decade to rebuild the military after that because everybody lost faith. The military today, we have the internet, we have all this. I think that there are people now that realize that we're not the good guys here. Now, those Marines on there on the Tripoli and on the other ships, they're training, they're practicing, they're getting ready, they're steeling themselves for combat. But I think if it goes in and they execute it, great. But when the first wave of Ospreys come in and 4 of them on the ground, all those Marines are dead, and the other Marines are on the ground, and they didn't get the logistics that was in the 5th Osprey. They had to turn around, and they're under fire right now. They're running out of ammunition. Right about that time, it's going to hit them that we're the bad guys and we're losing. There's not going to be this, let's die for God, country, and America. It's going to be, ask the people in Iraq near the end. Did they believe in the mission? No. They were deployed there. They didn't believe in the mission because they knew that the mission was a lie. Right now, every
I can just add to that. I went in during the surge of the Afghanistan war, and so I was there 2010, 2011. And I was my job required me to go down at the tactical level and see what was happening at the tip of the spear on all these different combat brigades. And to a man, everybody that I talked to, which was anywhere from captains, lieutenants, and battalion commanders primarily, all the guys on the ground said, we have no idea why we're even standing here. All we're doing is doing the tactical mission because that's what we're told to do. But the orders from above make no sense because this is not accomplishing anything. So they, at that point, and tying to your point a second ago, we're just fighting for each other to make sure that they could all come home. But they realized that the mission itself was unsolvable.
Yeah, and that's where we're at right now. I mean, look, there's no doubt in my mind that American fighting men and women will acquit themselves well when the time comes in terms of their initial tactical proficiency. They're very highly trained. The problem is we don't have a plan. I mean, this is the ultimate betrayal. We've got these great young Americans who are willing to give their lives for their country, willing to. They don't want to, but they're willing to. And they will do what we ask them to do. But it's the ultimate betrayal when we don't have a plan, when we haven't thought this thing through, when we send them forward into harm's way and they start dying, getting wounded, and there's no plan. And then you find out there's not just no plan, but there's no legitimacy to your actions. Colonel, you know this. You know that war, it breaks people. I mean, some people are strong and we can put forward a good face and all that stuff. But anybody who's been there, done that, and got the T-shirt, wakes up in the morning troubled by demons, troubled by the devil, because war requires you to do things that aren't normal. It's not natural. It's one thing to train for. It's another thing to actually do it. People can deal with the consequences of war when they look in the mirror and they say, I was fighting for a just cause. My comrades to my left and my right died. I'm very unhappy they died, but it was for a just cause. It was a sacrifice worthy of the loss. I can wrestle with these demons, but I can get through the day because I'm convinced that had I not done what I did, evil would have prevailed. But what happens when you look in the mirror and you say, everything was a lie? These guys died for no reason. I killed women and children for no reason. I did horrible things for no reason, no justification. And then you're broken. That's when the spirit's broken. That's why we got so many veterans committing suicide every day, because they've lost their way, because the wars we asked them to fight for 20 years, for 2 decades, were not just wars. Invading, occupying Iraq was not just. Invading, occupying Afghanistan was not just. And the way we behaved there, kicking down the doors of Iraqi civilians who just wanted to live. They weren't Saddam Hussein. They just wanted to live. They were at their home. Imagine somebody coming to your street, kicking down the doors of your neighbors while their kids are at home, pulling them out, making them sit there and cry. And if little Johnny Tucker was a little slow coming down the stairs, you shot and killed him in front of his family. The father jumped up because you just shot his son, and you killed him. The mother screams, you butt stroke her. Now you've killed an entire family. For what? For what? An Afghan wedding party. Put a bomb on them. We killed 75. For what? And we did this over and over and over and over again for decades straight. And this is what's happening here. The guys that are fighting this war right now, someday these pilots, they're high-fiving each other. They're going to be puking their guts out in the toilet when they realize what they've done, what they're responsible for. And where's America going to be? You got that yellow bumper sticker on the back of your car? Go to hell. Because you got a yellow bumper sticker on the back of the car, then go to the VA and change out the colostomy bag of some 30-year-old kid who lost his bowels when he was 19. Go find, everybody loves the soldiers, hey, you look good in uniform, girls, hey, I want to marry you, marry them. They go off to war. They come back and they're screwed up, man. They got hit with one too many IEDs. Their brain's a little rattled. And he's not the man that you married now, and you abandoned him. Now he feels the abandonment, and maybe he's hurt and he starts doing drugs and he's on the street homeless. I drove an ambulance for my fire department for a long time. We picked up homeless veterans all the time and took them to the VA. Abandoned by a society that claimed that we support our veterans. No, we don't. And the best way to support a veteran is to make sure we don't send them to an unjust war.
Yeah, that's obviously. I'll just say I know a lot of people may feel uncomfortable about the coarseness of what you're saying right here, but the reason why we need to say this is because it's reality. This nonsense and this fiction that the likes of Lindsey Graham, who had the audacity to say, God bless all you troops who were going there before any of them died. And now over 330 have been wounded, and at least 13 that we know of have been killed. It just angers me more than I can say, the audacity to say this. Or these guys that are saying, that these ground operations now, Yeah, there'll be some sacrifices and losses. That's what happens in war. I mean, Mark Levin is the latest one here, definitely saying we should go in and take the reprocessed material out of Iran, whatever the cost is. And I'm like, okay, you know what, Mark, you lead the way, or your son or your daughter, your family member. Let's see if you put them in the lead way, the lead element there, to realize that every word you just said is coarse and true and is waiting for our people here because of these absurd policies. That's what I think is important for us to convey.
I agree. And again, I apologize. I get a little emotional.
No, don't apologize. I didn't even attempt to stop you because you're just echoing what I feel right now as well.
Yeah, war is hell. To me, the ideal military career would be 20 years of training, and you'd have a bunch of achievement medals on your chest for achieving good things. No combat medals, no nothing. Not even deployment, because ideally we'd live in a world where we wouldn't have to project force. That's what we need diplomacy for. People need to understand that the reason why we have military forces engaged in Iran right now is that we don't have diplomacy. We aren't doing our job. We're sitting here really willing to spend $200 billion on losing a war, when Marco Rubio has literally gutted the State Department staff. We're not even getting into arms control. We don't have any arms control. There's no more treaties at all. It's crazy. Nuclear anarchy is all around us. Two nuclear powers, Israel and the United States, are attacking a nation that had a nuclear program under monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency in accordance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means we're not supposed to be doing this. They're supposed to be protected, but we're violating that, which means that nuclear non-proliferation is no longer a thing. People need to understand that in Trump's made-up manufactured case about Iranian nuclear capabilities, he's just ensuring that other nations, there's going to be more nuclear armed states in the world, not less. We're going in the wrong direction here. This is just fundamentally bad. But this is what happens when you promote people that shouldn't be promoted. Colonel, you know this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Pete Hegseth would be fired as an operations officer of any battalion he served in for half the crap that he's pulled here. If you had an operations officer brief you the way Hegseth is, with just platitudes and no detail, just throw out there, or give a prayer where he's quoting the Old Testament about how the religious aspects were, he'd be fired on the spot. The Marine Corps that I was in would have fired him on the spot. You're allowed to practice your religion, but you're not allowed to project your religion on the armed services of the United States of America. And that's what he's doing right now. He's a disgrace. He's a disgrace to the profession that he once served in. He's a disgrace to the profession he ostensibly leads today as Secretary of Defense, because he's not the Secretary of War. Congress hasn't deemed him to be such. He just made that stuff up and put it up out there because he wants to look and sound tough. The man is incompetent as the day is long. He may be able to bench 315 pounds. God bless you, Pete. I mean, I've never been able to do that, but I've been able to think, and he can't. I'll take 50 over bench press every day of the week.
Right out of the gates. You remember the whole thing about Signal Gate and all that, right? That's the guy that did operational planning on an unsecured but encrypted signal chat, private signal chat there, and then lied about it and said, no, there wasn't any of that going on. Every person in uniform that's been in service any more than, 3 or 4 weeks would certainly know that was 100% against the Army regulations, and anyone else in the military who did that, like as a major, for example, which he was at one time, would have been court-martialed or severely, Article 15, something like that. You would have gotten retribution and immediately, no questions asked. And then there he is leading it and then lying about it along with everybody else that was on there. So that was just a symbol of things to come, and it's only gotten worse. And he talks about no rules of engagement. We're not going to have any silly rules of engagement. No mercy, no quarter. I mean, those are all projections of war crimes. So to buttress your argument, not only is he not qualified for a position, but he is unqualified as an American to be leading this, and is potentially leading others into war crimes. It's that serious, in my view.
Colonel, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the American people need to understand this. We're not on the right side of history right now. And if we don't correct course, we don't live in a constitutional republic anymore. We have a president who has foregone the concept of law, the rule of law. He says, I don't believe in law. I believe in my own personal morality. Problematic. And he doesn't care about Congress. He didn't even try to go to Congress to bring us up. People say, well, the War Powers Act. No, the War Powers Act requires there to be an imminent threat. There has to be an imminent threat. There was no imminent threat. What about Iran's nuclear stuff? Gosh, we were diplomatically engaged with them and actually had a deal worked out, ready to be signed. So there's no imminent threat. This is straight up unconstitutional as the day is long. It's a violation of the United Nations Charter. Well, Scott, that's international law. That doesn't matter. No, it's the Constitution because, geez, supremacy clause. We did, the president signed the charter, Senate ratified it, and it became the supreme law of the land here in the United States. The whole War Powers Act 1996 is premised on the validity of the Geneva Conventions, which serve as the cornerstone of the law of war manual. We are committing war crimes, nonstop war crimes. We have to correct this. So when this is all said and done, we're the nation of jurisdiction. We need to hold these people accountable right now. And I'm telling you right off the bat, Pete Hegseth must be arrested, tried, and if he's committed the crimes, and I believe he has, convicted. I'm not arguing for the death penalty. I don't want to see him shot, but I would like to see him spend the rest of his life in jail. Sort of the modern day version of Rudolf Hess, who spent his entire life after defecting to the British after the war ended in Spandau prison. Fort Leavenworth should have a room called the Pete Hegseth Memorial Room, and that's where Pete gets to spend the rest of his life thinking about the crimes he has committed, the stupidity of his actions. And there's some generals that need to go down too. If you're wearing 4 stars, you're not going to be forgiven. You shouldn't be forgiven. In America, we need to hold these people accountable. Stop promoting them. Don't allow any companies to put these people on their boards to survive. You have a choice. You get to sit there and shut the companies down by not buying their products. So when you find out that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff retired and ended up going to Raytheon, just say, Raytheon, we're dumping your stock. We're not doing this. We do have the power to do things. We, the people of the United States, we vote, we buy. We've sort of given up on that. We're allowing these things to happen in our name. We can't. We have to fix this, or else it's the end of America as we know it.
Yep. There are some very, very serious ramifications. And unfortunately, I think that none of those things that you say will happen until there is a burn, until we have had disaster. And it looks to me like we are steaming headlong into the rocks right now. So all those things you say may come to pass only because we have lost our way and hit the rocks. But we'll have to wait and see how that's going to work out. But in the meantime, we are very, very grateful for you coming on. And even as this raw situation, this raw episode has been for both of us, it is necessary. This is the kind of uncompromised and unintimidated truth America most needs right now. And we need more of it. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Colonel. Thanks for having me.
And we appreciate you guys too. Thanks ever so much for being with us today. Be sure and like and subscribe if you haven't done that. Also, as a reminder, we are also on podcasts. I know a lot of people like to get their information that way so they can listen to it as they're going through their day. Some of your friends like it. Make sure you send it to them, folks, so that there's many ways that they can get this. We're also on Substack. Don't let them miss this. Share this with people that you care about. Thanks very much, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We don't have sponsors because we hate to hit you over the head with ads. I don't like them. So show a little love back. Subscribe, like, and send this to somebody you care about.